Dr. Rick Timbs on right now. The governor's budget is out, and education seems to be getting shortchanged once again. It seems to be a story that we talk about year in and year out. It never seems to change. Dr. Rick Timbs, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So you were going to be in studio here this morning, but decided wisely that it's much easier to not have to drive through this stuff.
That's absolutely correct. I've got things to do here, and I don't want to get stuck in traffic or have an accident.
So, okay. Now, we talked just before the break about, there are legacy costs. There are insurance and retirement and just the normal costs, expenses that go up from year to year. You go up by a certain percentage, and when the aid doesn't come back to meet that percentage, and then you can't raise enough money because of the tax cap, what do schools do?
Well, they're in trouble. Actually, what happens here is that almost every single one of these legacy costs are tied somewhere to some type of legislation, law, or regulation. So therefore, schools are kind of stuck with these things, similar to a lot of municipalities and things like this. So what happens is, of course, according to the New York State Constitution, schools are supposed to be supported by the state financially. And what has happened, we've seen over the last 10 years, is that we've lost four items. We've lost equity, in other words, the distribution of aid. We've lost the predictability about how much aid people are going to get. We've lost, actually, the sustainability of these programs that people want for their kids. And last but not least, we've lost adequacy. In other words, the money isn't enough. It appears that they keep putting money into it. But actually, over the last 10 years, they've actually taken out $10 billion almost in this gap elimination adjustment, and we're still trying to recoup.
So how do we get past this year in, year out argument over this debate? It seems to be the same thing every single year.
Well, the big problem here is that the state government, including the legislature and governor, have to get their heads together and come up with a formula that is sustainable over a period of time so people can predict their aid. And also, the distribution of that money has to be equitable so that the people who need it the most get more out of the formula, and the people who need it the least get the least out. And then the amount of money in the formula itself has to be adequate to sustain these systems that everybody requires. So what we're seeing, for instance, I think you were noting some percentages the other day about what people got, like Utica got a 3%. But basically what that does is that brings them down to the state in the original 2007 formula that provided the predictability that we wanted. Even after a 3% increase in their aid, they basically are still owed $44 million.
Yeah.
And Rome is owed $7 million, and Herkimer is owed $2 million. Central Valley is owed $1.8 million, and even Dowsville is owed $900,000 even after these increases. Now, what really is the problem is, I think you'll find most school districts are not having a problem, hypothetically, with the tax cap per se, in a sense that nobody wants to keep taxing the locals, but we only have two sources of income, either local property taxes or the state. Those are the two biggest sources of income. But Utica City only can raise, per 1%, only $29 per child.
Yeah.
In Central Valley, $39, Dowsville, $53, Rome, $62, and Herkimer, $71.
What would that money be in Westchester?
Oh, cripe, it would be hundreds and hundreds of dollars in Westchester.
Yeah.
So what actually happened here is we are state aid dependent here because we are poorer communities compared to certain parts of the state. It's not just certain parts, but even on Long Island, there's districts actually just like us on Long Island, but much of the island is wealthy. Westchester has districts just like us as well, but they also have wealthy areas. So what we're seeing is there's really no rhyme or reason or sense to the distribution of these funds. Besides that, the pie's not big enough. They just took $10 billion away, and they're touting us that they gave us $6 billion more than they did before.
Yeah.
Well, that puts us still almost $3 to $4 billion in the hole.
And you have somebody like Sullivan Anthony Brindisi coming out and really repeating what you're saying here, that the formula is what needs to be changed. But again, this is something we hear year in and year out, and it never does get changed.
Well, actually, what happens is this state aid formula, and Assemblyman Brindisi is right on target, it does have to be changed. Now, I've got to hand it to the governor. He made about 3 tweaks to this formula that actually helped this equity distribution. The problem is he's not putting enough money into the pot. It's kind of like if I wanted to distribute money between everybody right there in your studio right now, all three of you, and I said, listen, I'm going to start handing out money. And I pull out a wad of bills, and everybody gets excited, and then I start handing out $1 to each, and I say, well, there you go. Now everybody's got more than they had before. the truth of it is, I handed out money, but it's just insufficient.
Yeah. All right, Michael piping in says, so Utica gets doubly crushed because they're growing, which means the shortfall gets larger and larger.
Absolutely. Now, here's the problem. In the formula, there's supposed to be extra dollars spent, and in terms of the state sending dollars to the city of Utica, as an example, for all the immigrant children, for special ed children, and so on. And those parts of the formula have not moved to make up for that, so that their total enrollment is not counting. They are being completely held back with this entire formula. That's a perfect example, Michael.
And what do you say to the person who says, you can't throw money at this problem? Our schools are failing. We keep throwing money at them. This is not working.
Well, here's the way I would look at it. It's not, it's kind of like if I started handing out that dollar bill within your studio, am I throwing money at you? Well, I guess hypothetically I am. But what are you going to do with a dollar? You can't even go get a good cup of coffee with a dollar. Yeah. My point would be is that a lot is expected of these schools. We are not in the 20th century anymore. We're in the 21st century. Find out what these kids are doing, what they know, and what they have to be able to do in this century. We're looking for manufacturing jobs, yes. But if you look at how do you fix a car anymore? I mean, when I was a young kid, I used to work on cars, tear engines apart. I open the hood now, and I'm just bedazzled. But this is what the new world is bringing. These kids have to be more technologically literate. They got to be sharper, more analytical thinking skills. It is a heavy lift for schools compared to the 20th century.
Yeah. Yet, at the same time, you keep hearing how our schools are failing our children. I think we do pretty well upstate.
Oh, I think we do. Our region actually does very, very well. When you start looking at averages, you got to remember that averages include the lowest performers along with the best performers. And so what happens is it kind of drags that number down. But we have a number of school districts in our region that do very well. There's some that are struggling. There's no doubt about it. But there's where the aid comes in. Poverty. Usually, the research indicates clearly the kids who live in poverty, kids who have social issues and emotional issues and those types of things are more difficult to educate, and it costs more money because you need more resources. And, of course, that's why there's a big push towards even pre-K with 3- and 4-year-olds. The governor's trying to do it. But we wish that money was put into a single formula rather than each one of these little categories so the school districts can make up their mind on how they want to use that money best.
Not every family has mom and dad sitting there at the dinner table at night making them do their homework and working with them on it.
Many of them have mom and dad working 2-3 jobs, working minimum wage jobs. And besides that, mom and dad don't have 21st century skills either. Right. They're trapped in really old, low-paying jobs. And what if we want, this is where the economy is so important, and I think especially for upstate New York. The governor, I think, is trying to get the economy started. He's struggling. There's no doubt about it. But the truth of it is if we want these kids to stay here, we have to provide two things, a good educational system for them, and then jobs. High-paying, high-caliber, high-skill, high-knowledge jobs.
I know the perfect place. It's right up in Marcy. They're right ready for them.
That's right, and that's what they should be doing. But look at those jobs that are going to be up there.
Yeah.
Some are going to be actually basic jobs, basic skill jobs, but many of them are going to be unbelievably high-skilled. And that's why I think schools are investing more into technology. They're looking at family and careers. They're looking at career and technical education. BOCES programs are blossoming because of the technology. We've got to support all those. And again, there's another example. BOCES aid, in order to support those jobs, is stuck back. The aid amount is basically back about 30, 40 years ago.
Dr. Rick Timbs, do you see any chance that this formula will be changed this session?
Yes. I think the legislature is going to try and do something with this. When we have we have our Senator Joe Griffall and we have Assemblyman Brindisi, I think they're cognizant of the issues. They see some movement here, but they know that they've got to do better, and we've got to come up with a phase-in formula to get this thing working.
All right. Dr. Rick Timbs, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a great day.